Chapter 41. I kneel before you, Guru. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Thwack. Thwack. The sound of a tennis racket hitting a tennis ball could be heard on the court. Occasionally, someone would cry out in pain. Qian Wei fell again and again. His face was swollen and disfigured from being struck by the tennis ball, while his opponent was casually waving his racket. His strokes looked casual, but every shot was deadly. This was not a competition but a one-sided massacre. Girls were squealing all around the tennis court. Wow, he's so cool. The girls were thrilled. Their eyes were turning into heart shapes. Coach Su stood on the spot, dumbfounded. The boy's performance on the court had stunned him over and over. His heart was full of admiration, but at the same time, he felt bitter. The boy's performance could simply be described as horrific. The technique and strength he had displayed in the matches were world-class. Prodigy. He's an earth-shaking prodigy. Thwack. Another ball struck Qian Wei. He grunted and fell limply onto the ground, unable to get up. I admit defeat. Please, spare me. Tang Hao was emotionless. He pointed toward another man. You're next. The person he pointed at went limp in his feet and nearly fell on his knees. Under the intense pressure from the crowd, he was forced to walk on the court. His fate was the same as Qian Wei's. Tang Hao fixed the final person before stepping down from the tennis court. You're too cool, Lil Tang. Didn't you say that you only know how to play a little? Why are you so amazing? Wu Xiaomua and the other girls exclaimed as they crowded around Tang Hao. Amazing. I'm just normal, Tang Hao replied. Qin Xiangyi walked over with a towel and wiped away his sweat. I've already said, there's no need to worry, Tang Hao said. Qin Xiangyi rolled her eyes at him and mumbled, you're even so good at tennis. I wonder if there's something that you're not good at. Tang Hao smiled, embarrassed. With his current physique, any normal sport was a walk in the park. You all can continue. I'll take a break. Tang Hao walked toward the bench next to the tennis court. At this moment, he heard someone calling him eagerly, Guru. Tang Hao was surprised. He turned around to see Coach Su running over to him. When he neared, he seemed like he was going to fall on his knees. Allow me to kneel before you, Guru. Tang Hao was shocked. He was wondering what his antics were. Please accept me as your disciple, Guru. He grabbed Tang Hao's hands tightly and his eyes looked at Tang Hao eagerly. Well. I can't. I'm not a guru. Tang Hao grinned. That's a true blue guru for you, so humble. Coach Su's eyes were sparkling. His admiration for the guru grew yet again. Guru, here, please sit down. Guru, are you feeling warm? I'll fan you. Guru, why not apply for a membership? It's free, so you can come here more often. Coach Su was eager to please Tang Hao and circled him relentlessly. Tang Hao had a headache dealing with this, but no matter what he did, Coach Su did not want to leave. Tang Hao just let him be. After a while, Fu Renjie and the other men left defeatedly. Qin Xiangyi and the other women played for a little while longer and left the club around noon. The five of them went to have lunch. After lunch, Tang Hao fetched Sis Xiangyi back to Azure Sky Gardens. Lil Tang, are you busy in the afternoon? Qin Xiangyi suddenly said. Nothing. Why? Then. How about we go on a date? Tang Hao's hand shook. The little three-wheeled motorcycle nearly rammed into a lamp post. Cough cough. Sis Xiangyi, you must be joking, right? Tang Hao was abashed. I'm not joking. You are my boyfriend today. Also, your performance was amazing earlier. I should reward you. So, are we going or not? Qin Xianyi's eyes were sparkling with a hint of cunning. Of course I'll go. Tang Hao replied urgently. All right then. Send me back to my house first, I'll take a shower and change clothes. All right. Tang Hao replied, then sped along the road with his little three-wheeled motorcycle. Back at Azure Sky Gardens, the security guard there went cross-eyed. F***ck me, it's really them. That kid Lil Tang, he must have struck a gold mine to have Boss Qin fall for him. After he sent Sis Xianyi back to house number 9, he waited for more than an hour before she came out again. She had changed into a fashionable set of clothes and wore makeup. She was more beautiful than ever. Let's go. She walked over leisurely and hopped on the little three-wheeled motorcycle. The motorcycle's engine roared to life and the motorcycle sped away. At the entrance to the gardens, the security guards were once again cross-eyed as they looked on with admiration. I wonder when can I be like Lil Tang and find a beautiful woman? A young security guard said with admiration. In your dreams. Why don't you look into a mirror and see how you look? An older security guard mocked him. Hey! One can dream, right? The young security guard sulked. The two of them went to the theme park after leaving Azure Sky Gardens. The couple spent the entire afternoon at the theme park, enjoying all the attractions there. For Tang Hao, this was the happiest day in his life as far as he could remember. He had been poor since young. His mother was gone since he was very small, and his father had struggled to raise him. He left, too, from being overworked. One could say that he did not have a happy childhood. This made him appreciate this moment of joy even more. After leaving the theme park, they had dinner and watched a movie. Tang Hao sent her home at about 8 o'clock at night. Lil Tang. I'm so happy today. Qin Xianyi was standing under a street light. Her enchanting face enveloped in the warm light was like from a scene in a dream. Her red phoenix eyes were like pools of spring water. Calm, gentle, inviting, alluring. She blinked as she looked at Tang Hao. There was a certain fragility in her gaze. Both of them were nervous as their eyes met. She suddenly burst out laughing. She tiptoed, leaned forward and pecked Tang Hao on the cheek. Thank you so much for today, Lil Tang. Her pretty face turned bright red. She ran back into her house as though she were escaping from something. Tang Hao stood there dumbfounded. He touched his cheek and mumbled, "Ah, man, I should have kissed her back." He chuckled at himself, then rode on the little three-wheeled motorcycle and returned to Tang Village. At this moment, there was a black car parked not too far away from house number 9. Chen Sandow sat in the car with a pair of binoculars in his hands. His face was gloomy. This be *TCH couple. They're even together now. What qualifications does this country bumpkin have to go after my woman? I'll make sure that you're dead. He spoke to himself through gritted teeth. In a fit of rage, he threw the binoculars to the ground, then stomped on it like a madman. Everything's in order, boss. We found the person, and deputy superintendent and has already agreed to it. This kid won't get out of this. The driver turned around to tell him. All right. Chen Sandow sat down and straightened his clothes. You brat, I'll make sure you regret ever crossing paths with Chen Sandow. His face was vicious when he said that. Chapter 42. Arrested. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. It was drizzling early in the next morning. Tang Hao sat cross-legged on his bed, absorbing the liquid of spiritual condensation in his body. He did not sleep again that night. As his level of cultivation grew and his physique changed, he did not feel tired even after staying up for long periods. His sleeping time had been substituted with time for cultivation and studying knowledge imparted by the pendant, including medical skills, talisman making, and sorcery. The techniques of talisman making and sorcery required one to be in the middle period of the state of qi channeling. Tang Hao's level of cultivation was currently not enough, though he could first learn the techniques so that he could easily master them in the future. Especially talisman making, which required a thorough study into the deep and complicated domain of talismans to even become a novice in the art. He opened his eyes after a long while. He had absorbed another portion of liquid of spiritual condensation and had increased the amount of qi in his body. "I'll have to go shopping in the medicinal herb market today," he mumbled while calculating. 3 days had passed in the blink of an eye since he quit his job. He had spent the past 3 days at home, only going out the night before to deliver more potions to President Biao and Sis Xiangyi. It was time to go out to buy more medicinal ingredients. Tang Hao was in no rush to move house. All the preparations for the mansion was complete and he could move in any time. He rode his little 3-wheeled motorcycle into town and went straight for the medicinal herb market. After a few rounds in the medicinal herb market, he had acquired ingredients for weight loss potions, aphrodisiac potions, beauty enhancement cream, and health care potions. He had bought multiple portions for each type of concoction. Especially the ingredients for aphrodisiac potion and beauty enhancement cream. These two concoctions were very high in demand. The aphrodisiac potion was very lucrative, selling at 20,000 yuan per bottle. After that, he left the medicinal herb market. He had not driven for too far before he saw 2 police cars driving in his direction. Tang Hao glanced at them then turned to look elsewhere. He did not have a good impression of police officers. They had framed him at the bathhouse in their first encounter, then he was wrongly accused in the next. He smirked and continued driving. He soon noticed that something was amiss. The 2 police cars changed directions abruptly and drove toward him. They braked in front of him and blocked his way. The doors to the police cars opened. Out rushed a squad of police officers. One of the police officers was a female. Her face was perfectly shaped like a pumpkin seed, and her delicate features could launch 1,000 ships. Her body was tall and slim, and it curved at all the right places. Tang Hao was surprised when he saw her. Wasn't she the beautiful female police officer from the bathhouse? "I think her name is Zhao Qingxue." Then, his expression changed. "Wait, this doesn't seem right at all. Why do they look like they're coming to arrest me? But what did I do though?" Tang Hao was puzzled. "Hey! What's going on?" he shouted. "What's going on? Humph, don't you know what crime you have committed?" A middle-aged police officer laughed coldly, showing an expression of disdain. "You're still so young but you're already human scum." The other police officers also showed him expressions of disdain. Zhao Qingxue looked absolutely disgusted. "Squad leader son, there's no mistake, that's him. We caught him last time in a bathhouse during a prostitution ring crackdown. He was lucky at that time to get off scot-free. I didn't expect him to be a rapist, too. I knew it. This person is a pervert. Pure human scum." Her face was ice-cold as she glared at Tang Hao. "So he has a former record of. Prepare to be locked up for a long time, kid." The middle-aged police officer laughed coldly. Tang Hao was thoroughly confused when he heard all that. Rape? What's going on? When did I ever do something like that? That's impossible. Unless I'm being framed again. Officers, wait. There must be some kind of mistake here. Did you mistake me for someone else? He said urgently. Heh. How could we mistake you for someone else? It's you, all right. The middle-aged police officer smirked, then ordered the police officers around him. Cuff him up and haul him away. 2 police officers rushed forward and pinned him down. Tang Hao felt angry all of a sudden. He had been called a rapist when he was innocent, and it did not look like they had been mistaken. The only possibility left was that he was framed again. At that moment, he could not think of who could have done it. Zhang Tianhao. No, he doesn't have that much power. The crime of rape was a serious offense. So if it's not Zhang Tianhao, who else could it be? Tang Hao was clueless. The 2 police officers treated him roughly. They folded his arms behind his back and pinned him onto the hood of the police car. Tang Hao was furious and wanted to break free of their grip. With his strength, he did not have to struggle too hard to shrug off these 2 people. He restrained himself not to do so after thinking about it. He was innocent, and therefore had nothing to be afraid of. He did not want to be framed with another crime of assaulting the police. Clack. He could feel the coldness of the handcuffs as they went around his wrists. Officers, I'm really innocent. Nonsense. That's what all the criminals say when we haul them in, and how many of them turn out to be innocent anyway? Enough talk, let's go. The 2 police officers shoved Tang Hao into the car, then the cars left. In under 20 minutes, Tang Hao found himself in the interrogation room once more. 2 police officers sat in front of him, one of them was the squad leader Sunday Zhao Qingxue and another police officer were observing at the side of the room. Tang Hao, I'm asking you, where were you at 8:30 p.m. last night? Squad leader Sun asked menacingly. 8:30, I was at home. No, I was on the way home, Tang Hao replied after thinking for a while. So this must be you then. Squad leader Sun opened the case file in front of him and retrieved a photograph. He pushed it in front of Tang Hao. This was a photograph from a security camera. There was a little 3-wheeled motorcycle in it. Tang Hao looked closely and saw that he was in the photograph. That's me. What about it? Tang Hao asked confusedly. Squad leader Sun smirked. He retrieved another photograph. On it was a woman about 20.4 or 20.5 years of age. She looked pretty, but her eyes were swollen and looked languid. Does this person look familiar? Tang Hao looked at it and found her somewhat familiar. I've seen her before, last night on this street. She was a little drunk, and I helped her get up. Ha! So you're admitting it? Squad leader Sun laughed coldly. What did I admit? The crime, of course. She is the victim. Are you still trying to argue out of this, kid? The crime scene is at an alley not too far away. You must have been aroused and tailed her into the alley, where you committed the crime. We found hairs on her body and skin flakes in her fingernails. We'll just have to match them with your DNA and we'll know if you really did it. Squad leader Sun slammed the table and stood up. His eyes were as fierce as a tiger's while glaring at Tang Hao. As a veteran police officer, squad leader Sun carried a threatening aura on him. Any normal criminal would have been intimidated being glared like that. Tang Hao was not a normal person though. Furthermore, he was innocent. The glare had no effect on him. Officer, I didn't do it. Please don't frame innocent people. Innocent people. Ha! You're innocent. Don't try to argue anymore. She had singled you out as the criminal, and the security camera had captured you following into the alley after her. With the hair and skin flakes, that's enough evidence to lock you away. You still say you're framed. Squad leader Sun slammed the table again and roared. Chapter 43. You're dead meat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Tang Hao furrowed his brows. He was very sure that he was being framed. Looking at the evidence presented, the framing was premeditated, too. The situation isn't looking good. I might just be found guilty. Are you ready to confess yet, kid? You'll be treated with leniency if you come clean on yourself, at least get a few years shaved off your sentence. Otherwise, you're in for a good time. Squad leader's son said sternly. Pa. You've got it all wrong. Even an idiot knows that. I didn't do anything wrong anyway. I'm not confessing. Tang Hao spoke with a smile, clearly unafraid of the danger. You. Squad leader's son was raging. I didn't do it. Last night I saw her fallen on the ground, so I helped her stand up. She was grabbing me last night, so that must have been the time when my hair and skin flakes were left on her body. Still trying to find excuses. If you didn't do it, why did she say that it was you? You also have a former record of. Who else could it have been? Squad leader's son slammed on the table and roared. How would I know? She must be falsely accusing me. If not that, she might have remembered wrongly. She was drunk last night. As for, I didn't do it. Didn't we get that clear last time? She's falsely accusing you. That's a joke. You're a lot more shameless than I thought. Alright, I'll see how many more excuses you can make. Squad leader's son said angrily as he slammed the table. Hey. I can call my lawyer, right? If not, at least make a phone call. Tang Hao said. Who are you calling? Squad leader's son said coldly. A friend. Lil Zhou, bring him his phone. Squad leader's son ordered the police officer next to him. The police officer walked away, then returned with Tang Hao's phone. Thanks. Tang Hao unlocked his phone and dialed Lu Dajuan's number. Hey, it's Lil Tang. What's up? Lu Dajuan's voice was heard from the other end of the phone. Big bro Lu, I'm arrested. What? Lu Dajuan jumped from his seat. What's wrong? They say I raped someone. Rape. That's a huge joke. They must have been mistaken, right? Don't fret, Lil Tang, I'll think up something. After ending the call, Tang Hao placed the phone on the table. Now that you've made your call. Are you ready to confess yet? Squad leader's son said. I didn't do it. I'm not confessing, Tang Hao said coldly. You. Squad leader's son was ferocious. His eyes were as big as cowbells and shot daggers at Tang Hao. Just then, his phone rang. He looked at it and his expression changed. It's Deputy Commissioner N. He picked up the call and left the interrogation room. Tang Hao's sensitive ears picked up squad leader's voice from outside the room. Hello, Deputy Commissioner. How's the matter coming along, Lil Sunday? Has he confessed? The voice from the other end of the call was low and hoarse. He hasn't. He's a stubborn kid, this one. He's not confessing no matter what. I think I ought to rough him up a bit, otherwise, we'll be sitting here all day. Alright, suit yourself then. You'd better get him to confess as fast as you can, and get this case settled as soon as possible. Don't worry, you'll be handsomely rewarded. Boss Chen gave us 5 million yuan this time. When the case is settled, we'll each get half. Yes, yes. Don't worry, Deputy Commissioner. It's not the first time I'm doing this. He's just a village kid. Easy peasy, squad leader's son lowered his voice, and he sounded somewhat fawning. Alright then. I know I can count on you to do the job. Let me know when it's done. Yes. Squad leader's son ended the call and returned to the interrogation room. What did the deputy commissioner say, squad leader? One of the police officers asked. He says he's very concerned with the development of this case. We will need to solve it as quickly as we can, squad leader's son replied. Then, he returned to his seat. Let me ask you one more time. Do you confess or not? He questioned as he glared at Tang Hao. Tang Hao did not reply. Instead, he smiled curiously as he looked at Squad Leader Sunday. Then, he leaned over to Squad Leader Sun's ear and whispered, "Squad Leader Sun, it's a bad habit to lie. I've heard everything in the conversation outside." Squad Leader Sun's expression changed. Slam. He rose from his seat. His expression was scary and both of his eyes were transfixed on Tang Hao, as though something grew on his face. His emotions were in turmoil and his back was already wet with cold sweat. That can't be. This interrogation room is soundproof and I've already lowered my voice. No one else could have heard me. He must be bluffing. But why did he have to bluff me? Unless he really knows something. What's the matter, Squad Leader Sunday? The other police officers saw his changed expression and asked out of concern. This kid just cursed me. Go outside and turn off the security camera. Squad Leader Sun said sternly. The other police officers were surprised, then they understood what Squad Leader Sun intended to do. You can't do that, Squad Leader Sunday. It's against the law to force a confession. Zhao Qingxue was anxious. Get out. Squad Leader Sun roared. Let's go, Officer Zhao. Squad Leader Sun knows what he's doing, one of the police officers said. Get out. Now. Squad Leader Sun roared again. Zhao Qingxue hesitated, then turned around and left the room. Slam. The door closed. 2 people were left in the interrogation room. Squad Leader Sun's face was ghastly under the dim yellow light and looked even a little vicious. Earlier, he had looked like the face of justice. Now, he was like a dastardly criminal. You dare bluff me, kid? Squad Leader Sun said through gritted teeth. Bluff you? Tang Hao smiled. I did hear every word that was said earlier. You might look like a righteous person, but you do some really despicable things under the table. Tell me, are you still a policeman of the people? Then, Tang Hao smirked mockingly. Squad Leader Sun shuddered and his expression changed. Impossible. This interrogation room is soundproof. You did not hear anything. Really? Tang Hao said leisurely, 5 million is not a small sum, Squad Leader Sunday. You. How did you know that? Squad Leader Sun's face changed color. Didn't I tell you I've heard everything? Tang Hao said coldly, it happens that my ears are unusually sensitive. Squad Leader Sun's face changed color a few times. He was flustered at one time, then his face became ferocious. Silly brat, so what if you found out? No one will believe you. Do you think people would listen to a convicted rapist? Say another word and I'll kill you. He walked in front of Tang Hao then spoke viciously into Tang Hao's ear. Squad Leader Sun, you can't hide the facts forever. You'll soon face the consequences of your actions. Tang Hao said coldly. Looks like you're tired of living, you brat. Squad Leader Sun roared. His face turned savage in an instant. He reached out to grab Tang Hao's hair. Tang Hao dodged and rammed into his chest. Bang! The headbutt caused Squad Leader Sun to stumble backward and slam into the wall behind him. Chapter 44. A Savior Arrives. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, you've got balls, kid. Squad Leader Sun massaged his chest, his face becoming more and more vicious by the moment. He narrowed his eyes which pulsated with danger, like a venomous snake. He flicked his wrists, then stepped forward abruptly and aimed a punch at Tang Hao's face. Tang Hao lowered himself and dodged the punch. He then kicked toward the opponent's calves. Squad Leader Sun grunted and fell forward. His forehead hit the corner of the chair and blood spurted. Bastard! I'll kill you. He stood up and touched his forehead. He was on the brink of madness looking at the blood on his hand. He panted heavily and his body shuddered. He finally calmed himself down, then walked in front of Tang Hao and sat down. He reached behind his waist and unholstered his gun, then slammed it on the table. He narrowed his eyes and said chillingly, "This is what will happen next. You will ask me to go to the bathroom, so I will remove your handcuffs. You will try to snatch my handgun, and in the struggle, I will accidentally discharge a bullet and kill you. In that case, I will be acting out of self-defense and will be let off scot-free. As for you, no one will care if a rapist dies." Squad leader Sun paused for a while. "This is your first option. The second option is for you to confess, then watch your mouth in the future. In that case, I can spare your life. So, what's your choice? What if I don't choose either?" Tang Hao laughed. "You do not have any other choice. It's either the first option or the second option. It all depends on whether you want to live. I'll give you some time starting from now to think carefully." After that, squad leader Sun took out a pack of cigarettes and lit one. He leaned back on his chair and spewed clouds of smoke. Lu Dajuan, Jin Biao and the rest were huddled in a conference room in Sunshine Plaza. Lu Dajuan was on a call on his phone. After a while, he ended the call. His expression was grim. "What's wrong, OL, Lu?" Jin Biao and the others asked worriedly. Lu Dajuan furrowed his brows and spoke gloomily. "It's not looking good. The person behind this is quite powerful and they've done their preparations. They're prepared to lock Lil Tang behind bars for a very long time. No matter how perfect their plan might be, there should be some flaws in it." Jin Biao exclaimed. "That's for sure. However, the other party has connections in the police station. I've heard that Deputy Commissioner and is taking care of this case, and that's why it's being fast-tracked," Lu Dajuan explained. "An Zhenghua. That old fox. I knew that there's something dirty going on with him," President Li said indignantly. "If this guy's hands are in the case, any dubious case can result in a guilty verdict. There aren't too many people connected to him. If I may hazard a guess, it's that Chen Sandow. He's been going after Qin the femme fatale for a long time, and recently she's been very close with Lil Tang," Jin Biao said. "Looks like that has to be it. It's Chen Sandow's handiwork," Lu Dajuan said. Chen Sandow was also in the property business. However, his methods were not entirely orthodox. He used to be a gangster who terrorized Westridge district. Lu Dajuan was in the same line of business and he knew this very well. "Should we let Qin know about this?" Jin Biao asked hesitantly. "There's no need." Lu Dajuan shook his head. "If she knows that Lil Tang is framed because of her, she'll feel bad about herself. We can tell her after we settle the issue. So what do we do now? With that and Zhenghua's hand in this, we can't bail him out. We need to find some way to prove Lil Tang's innocence," President Li said. "How do we prove that?" Jin Biao frowned. "Now they have material evidence and the victim as a witness. The situation isn't looking good for us unless we can find the victim. This victim should be manipulated by Chen Sandow. If we can find something on her and get her to retract her accusation, we can restore justice to Tang Hao. That makes sense. Can you find the identity of the victim though?" Jin Biao asked. "It won't be easy. I don't have connections in the criminal department. My contacts will need time to dig for the information," Lu Dajuan said. "Time? We don't have time. Now that Lil Tang is in their hands, they will force a confession out of him so that he can be sentenced immediately. Things aren't looking great if this goes on," Jin Biao said worriedly. Everyone sighed and frowned. Suddenly, President Huang's phone rang. President Huang took out the phone and exclaimed, "It's Secretary Lin." Everyone was shocked, then expressions of happiness appeared on their faces. Lu Dajuan slapped his thigh and shouted, "Our savior is here. Quick, pick up the call." President Huang hurriedly answered the call. Hey. Secretary Lin. Rengui. Well. I have been busy these few days and I am only recently free. I would like to invite you and Divine Dr. Tang for a dinner gathering tonight to thank him for what he did for our family. Secretary Lin's voice was happy on the other end of the call. Let me tell you, Mingxuan's recovery over the last few days has been speedy. Even Senior Dr. Chen thinks that it is incredible. It must be all thanks to Divine Dr. Tang's miraculous medical skills. I will need to thank him personally. Well. Secretary Lin, wouldn't you know? Lil Tang is in a bit of trouble now, President Huang said. What trouble? Secretary Lin was surprised. He was arrested. Someone framed him of rape. What? Secretary Lin's tone of voice changed. It had suddenly become a lot more serious. What's going on, Rengui? It's that Chen Sandao. He has a grudge with Lil Tang and framed him. Also, he has connections in the police force. Even that An Zhenghua is involved in this. An Zhenghua. Deputy Commissioner An. He's also involved. That's right. It's been a while since Lil Tang was arrested. I'm afraid something might happen to him. Rengui, I trust in Divine Dr. Tang's character, but are you really sure that he was framed? Secretary Lin contemplated. I'm 100% sure. He is definitely framed. President Huang slapped his chest. All right. I will see that the matter is settled. This An Zhenghua dares to abuse his authority for private matters and frame the innocent. I wonder if he thinks he is above the law. Secretary Lin slammed the table and stood from his seat. Rengui, I will come over now. Let us meet at the police station and get Divine Dr. Tang out of there. All right. President Huang said emotionally, I'll depart immediately with President Liu and the others. After that, he ended the call. We've done it. With Secretary Lin on our side, all our problems will be solved. Lu Dajuan and the others breathed a sigh of relief when they heard that. Now that everyone's ready, go, let's fetch Lil Tang. All of these people left the building as though it was on fire. They hopped onto their cars and sped toward the police station. Chapter 45. Secretary Lin is here. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Westridge District Police Headquarters. In the Deputy Commissioner's office, an old man of about 60 years old, dressed in a police uniform, was sitting in his chair next to the window. He was short and slightly plump. He leaned back on his chair, looking pleased with himself with a cigarette in his mouth. Suddenly, the phone on his desk rang. He gave his cigarette a long drag, then picked up the phone. His round old face displayed a hint of delight. Hey! Boss Chen. How are things coming along, Deputy Commissioner An? On the other end of the call was Chen Sandao's sinister voice. Don't worry, everything's going smoothly. He's just a village kid, right? How hard is it to get him to confess? Once he does and the sentence is passed, that'll be the end of him. Deputy Commissioner An smiled. Good to hear. Thanks to you, Deputy Commissioner An. I'll transfer the 7 million over soon. Alright, nice working with you, Boss Chen. An Zhenghua's mood was carefree when he hung up the call. Out of the 7 million, 4.5 million was his. That would have padded his wallet by quite a bit. He was due to retire in a few years. There was already no hope for him to climb the ranks. He would rather earn more money now so that he can live comfortably after retiring. He laughed to himself again, then picked up his phone to dial Squad Leader Sun's number. The interrogation room was filled with cigarette smoke. The sudden ringing of Squad Leader Sun's phone broke the silence. Squad Leader Sun stubbed out his cigarette and picked up the call. How are things in there, Lil Sunday? Has the kid confessed? Squad leader Sun furrowed his brows and spoke in a low voice. There might be some complications, Deputy Commissioner. What's wrong? And Zhenghua was suddenly anxious. I don't know how this kid found out about our deal. He knows about the 5 million yuan. What? And Zhenghua's face turned pale. He shot up from his seat. How does he know? I don't know how he knows. He might have very sensitive ears and overheard our conversation. Sigh. How could you be so careless? And Zhenghua spoke frustratedly. Don't worry, Deputy Commissioner, it doesn't matter even if he knows. Once he confesses, he'll be a convicted rapist and no one will believe him. If he doesn't confess, I'll put a bullet through his head. Don't be rash, Lil Sunday. Don't worry, I'll make sure there are no loose ends. He's just a village kid, who the hell would care if he dies? I think Boss Chen would be happier if he's dead. Squad leader Sun said while looking coldly at Tang Hao. Well. All right. Do what you can, be careful. Squad leader Sun grunted an affirmation, then ended the call. He tossed the phone on the table, then tilted his head and said coldly, Time's up, kid. It's time to make your choice. After that, he held his breath, then slammed his head onto the table a few times, causing his face to swell up. Then, he punched himself in the face a few times. Pah! He spat a mouthful of blood foam. He stood up and grabbed the gun on the table. His face was savage as a hungry wolf. Now it's up to you if you want to live or die, kid. In the office, An Zhenghua put the phone on his table and sat there with a grim look on his face. The sudden change in events had caused him to be uneasy. Things should be fine. A village kid shouldn't cause so much trouble. He mumbled to himself, then breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, the phone on his table rang. He picked up the receiver. Deputy Commissioner, Secretary Lin is here. What? An Zhenghua exclaimed and abruptly shot up from his seat. He turned around and he could see through the window that a black car was driving up to the entrance of the police station. He put the receiver down. Why is Secretary Lin here? His face was flustered. He straightened his uniform before hastily stepping out of the office. You. And you, all of you, come here. Let us go greet Secretary Lin, he yelled while jogging toward the entrance. The entire police headquarters was immediately sent into a tizzy. Police officers emerged from their offices and followed An Zhenghua to the entrance. Secretary Lin was one of the highest-ranking officials in the district. A true VIP. Soon, the police officers arrived at the entrance. The black car stopped right in front of the entrance of the police station. The driver got out of the car, then opened a door at the back. A middle-aged man in a black business suit stepped out of the car. He had a square face, and his thick eyebrows were like swords. He bore an intimidating aura. Secretary Lin. An Zhenghua was all smiles as he greeted him eagerly. I wonder if Secretary Lin is here for some official matters. Secretary Lin glared at him. His brows were slightly furrowed and his gaze was cold. He did not say anything, but turned around and walked toward the front gate. A fleet of luxury cars drove into the police station grounds one after another and stopped behind the black car. Next, people emerged from each of those cars. An Zhenghua was shocked when he saw this scene. He knew a lot of these people. They were all rich businessmen in the district, especially Lu Dajuan who, as the president of Brilliant Property, was one of the most prestigious people in the district. That's strange. Why are all these people here? It looks like they followed Secretary Lin here. An Zhenghua was puzzled. The police officers standing behind him were wondering too. Secretary Lin, what's? An Zhenghua asked as he took a step forward. Secretary Lin glared at him coldly and spoke in a stern voice. You should know very well why I am here, Deputy Commissioner An. An Zhenghua was confused. He looked blankly at Lu Dajuan and the others and shook his head. Secretary Lin. I really don't know why you all are here. Secretary Lin smiled coldly. Did you not bring in someone named Tang Hao today? Tang Hao. The name sounds familiar. An Zhenghua furrowed his brows and sunk into deep thought. Suddenly, his body trembled and he stood stiffly on the spot. His eyes slowly widened and his face displayed a look of incredulity. Isn't Tang Hao that village kid? What's going on? How could someone as high up as Secretary Lin be acquainted with this village kid? That's impossible. Boss Chen said that he was just a normal country bumpkin without money or power. How was he suddenly connected to Secretary Lin? They also looked more than mere acquaintances. Secretary Lin looks like he's here to rescue him. It's all over. His face turned pale as beads of cold sweat formed on his forehead. He had thought dealing with this simple village kid would be a piece of cake. He did not expect that this simple village kid was connected to Secretary Lin. If he had known about this, he would not have agreed to Chen Sandao's request. His intestines were in knots and he was cursing Chen Sandao to hell. I'm asking you a question, Deputy Commissioner An. Secretary Lin roared. Yes. Yes. We did arrest someone called Tang Hao, he was involved in a rape. An Zhenghua replied fearfully while he bowed. Where is he? Secretary Lin interjected and asked sternly. He's in the interrogation room. An Zhenghua's face turned white after he remembered what squad leader Sun said. Oh no. If he put a bullet through the kid's head as he said, it's all over. His body shuddered and his face turned pale as a sheet. Chapter 46. The gunshot in the interrogation room. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Secretary Lin furrowed his thick eyebrows and said sternly. I will deal with you later. You had better bring me to the interrogation room now. Yes, yes. An Zhenghua wiped away the sweat on his brow, then led Secretary Lin into the building. Lu Dajuan and the rest of the bosses, as well as the contingent of police officers, followed behind. The massive crowd reached the interrogation room. In front of the interrogation room, Zhao Qingxue and the other police officers were waiting anxiously. They suddenly saw a large group of people appear at the end of the corridor. The scene caused them to be dumbfounded. What's going on? Zhao Qingxue's eyes were wide open. Her beautiful face was full of shock. That's Deputy Kao. The other person looked somewhat familiar. Oh my God. It's Secretary Lin. Why is Secretary Lin here? The other police officers exclaimed in surprise. None of them knew what was going on. Deputy Commissioner, you are. One of them went forward and asked. Lil Zhou, I'm asking you, where's squad leader Sunday? Is he still inside? An Zhenghua asked him urgently. Yes. He's still inside. That kid is pretty stubborn. I don't think he's confessed yet, that police officer replied. Open the door, quick. An Zhenghua became more anxious. He walked ahead toward the interrogation room. At this moment, everyone heard a dull bang in the interrogation room. It was the sound of gunfire. An Zhenghua's body teetered. He could only feel the heavens and the earth spinning and he nearly tumbled to the floor. It's all over. It's all over. That was the single thought left in his brain. Open the door. Secretary Lin was pale in the face and was extremely nervous. He roared at the two police officers next to the door. The two police officers panicked and urgently opened the door. The group of people rushed into the room and were stunned by what they had seen. The scene that they were presented was the exact opposite of what they had in mind. A boy stood at one corner of the interrogation room. His clothes were disheveled and there were bloodstains on his white button-down shirt. His expression was as cold as ice. In his hand was a gun that was aimed at a middle-aged man sprawled on the floor and looked flustered. Secretary Lin's jaw dropped. He had thought that Divine Dr. Tang was shot, but he was surprised to see that the opposite was true. And Zhenghua was also dumbfounded. How could a veteran squad leader that had been through countless fights lose to a boy? The other policemen were also extremely shocked. For an instant, the interrogation room was deathly silent. Next, squad leader Sun screamed. "Lil Zhou, Lil Li, quick, gun him down. He snatched my gun and tried to kill me." The police officers reached for the guns at their waists. "Everyone! Stop this instant!" Secretary Lin roared. The few policemen were shocked and reflexively stopped their movement. "What are you doing? Shoot him quick. He has a gun in his hand. Are you blind?" Squad leader Sun roared madly. Tang Hao laughed coldly. With a wave of his hand, he tossed the gun aside. "Why aren't you restraining him?" Squad leader Sun was shocked at the motion. "Shut up!" Secretary Lin roared. "Who the hell are you to ask me to shut up? I'm a squad leader here, and you tell me to shut up." Squad leader Sun was extremely frustrated that he was thrown to the floor by a kid. Secretary Lin's orders had riled him, so he pounced up and cursed at Secretary Lin. Soon, he realized something was amiss. Why does this person look familiar? The other police officers standing at the door were twitching. They only wanted to cover their faces with their hands. "Squad leader, he's Secretary Lin." The police officer named Lil Zhou reminded him with a low voice. Squad leader Sun trembled. His face turned pale as a sheet as he stood stiffly on the spot. "Secretary Lin. Secretary Lin, why are you here?" "Pretty impressive, Squad leader Sunday." Secretary Lin remarked coldly, then he walked toward Tang Hao with an eager face. "Divine Dr. Tang, I am sorry for being late. You must have been through a lot." He grasped Tang Hao's hands tightly and shook them. Squad leader Sun trembled and his mind went blank. What the hell is going on? Why is Secretary Lin being so hospitable toward this village kid? And he's calling him Divine Doctor too. Isn't this kid just a country bumpkin? Isn't Secretary Lin one of the top-ranking people in the district? How would he be connected to someone like this kid? His eyes were opened round and wide, and his face displayed a look of utter confusion. The scene that happened in front of him had struck him like lightning. Then, he came to his senses and all blood drained from his face. He knew this time that his life was over. No wonder the kid had remained composed all this while. He was connected to Secretary Lin. Squad leader Sun could only feel regret. In his heart, he cursed Deputy Commissioner N and Chen Sandao down to hell. Zhao Qingxue and the other police officers stood stiffly at the door. How could this be? Zhao Qingxue exclaimed with her hands over her mouth. Her beautiful eyes were opened round and wide. Isn't this Tang Hao a perverted lowlife? How is he connected to Secretary Lin, and why is Secretary Lin calling him a divine doctor? Which part of him looks like a doctor? Don't tell me he's a con artist too. Her eyes were transfixed on Tang Hao, as though she wanted to find something on his face. Secretary Lin, Big Bro Lu. Tang Hao greeted them one by one with a smile. Sorry to trouble you again this time. What do you mean? We're all brothers, it's no trouble at all. Lu Dajuan stepped forward and gregariously slapped on Tang Hao's chest. Jin Biao and the others also squeezed into the room and stood next to Tang Hao. Lil Tang, you've been through a lot. Jin Biao expressed deep concern when he saw the bloodstains on Tang Hao. Then, he glared at the group of police officers. Is this how the police conduct investigations? I will lodge an official complaint about this. Secretary Lin's face became gloomier by the moment. According to the standard operating procedure, 2 police officers were required to be present in the room during interrogation and a security log was to be kept. When they came, only squad leader's son was present in the interrogation room. He raised his head to observe that the light on the security camera was off. The situation could not have been more obvious. The scene they saw when they came in could be interpreted as Tang Hao acting in self-defense. All of you performed excellently today. I am proud to have such an elite police force in my district. Secretary Lin scolded sarcastically. Chapter 47. Moving House. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The group of police officers lowered their heads when being scolded. Especially the squad including Zhao Qingxue, who was feeling absolutely ashamed of themselves. Squad leader's son raised his head to look at Tang Hao, then turned to look at An Zhenghua. He gritted his teeth. His face displayed an expression of hatred. An Zhenghua had dragged him into this mess, and now he thought that his superior was going to push all the blame on him. It seemed that there was no use covering up the misdeeds since they were already exposed anyway. He decided to strike first and push away as much responsibility as possible. With that thought in mind, he lifted his arm and pointed at An Zhenghua. I'm just doing his bidding. He was the one who struck a deal with Chen Sandao to frame Brother Tang. This is all a ploy by him and Chen Sandao. It's all fabricated evidence. Everyone exclaimed in surprise when they heard the statement. Especially the police officers. You. That's a blatant lie. An Zhenghua was hysterical. Ha. An Zhenghua, you still want to deny it at this point. Didn't you threaten me to perform this dirty deed for you? You also ordered me to kill him off after he discovered our deal. Squad leader's son spoke through gritted teeth. The crowd roared with surprise again. All the police officers looked a little pale. Your bravery is commendable, An Zhenghua. Secretary Lin was raging. He was also quietly apprehensive that divine Dr. Tang might have been killed if not that he knew how to defend himself. An Zhenghua trembled. His face was ghostly pale. Don't listen to his nonsense, Secretary Lin. Killing the kid was his plan. So, you mean that everything else was your plan? Secretary Lin answered coldly. An Zhenghua was at a loss for words. The two of you, you think you are above the law. Can I have a volunteer to cuff these two up? Secretary Lin roared. A few police officers stepped forward and handcuffed the two of them. An Zhenghua's body went limp as if all his bones had dissolved. He nearly fell sitting to the ground and his expression was blank. Squad leader's son managed to keep his cool. This is a major scandal. We will have to deal with this with the utmost urgency. An Zhenghua, you must have a lot of dirt in your history, right? We will settle this all at once. Secretary Lin was pacing back and forth, his face a stern color. So, let me ask you again, is this all Chen Sandao's plan? He planned to frame little brother Tang. Yes. It's him. He agreed to pay me 7 million yuan for the deed. I have evidence for that. I've recorded all my conversations with him, An Zhenghua answered. This Chen Sandao has been a thorn in my side all this while. He has many gangsters under his control. This time, we will bring him to justice. Secretary Lin said resolutely. He swept his gaze across the police officers as he spoke. A middle-aged police officer stepped to the front. Don't worry, Secretary Lin, I will immediately mobilize a squad to bring Chen Sandao in. Yes. You must eliminate this threat at its root. Secretary Lin said. Yes, sir. The middle-aged police officer performed a salute, then left hurriedly with most of the police officers there. I am terribly sorry that this happened to you, divine Dr. Tang. Do not worry, I will follow up this case closely and make sure that it is settled to your satisfaction. Secretary Lin walked toward Tang Hao and said. Thank you for your service, Secretary Lin. Also, please don't call me Divine Doctor. Just Lil Tang is fine. Tang Hao said. Secretary Lin grinned. Alright, I will call you Lil Tang from now on then. That sounds a lot more approachable. Are you alright, Lil Tang? All those blood. Don't worry, it's not my blood. He's not strong enough to lay a finger on me. Tang Hao smiled. As he said so, he coldly glared at Squad Leader Sunday. Squad Leader Sun turned pale. His face displayed panic. The scene earlier could only be described as a nightmare. The kid did not look muscular, but his strength was overwhelming and his martial arts techniques were incredible. The squad leader was toppled onto the floor in a few moves. That is good to hear. Secretary Lin breathed a sigh of relief. He noticed the handcuffs still on Tang Hao's left wrist and beckoned to the police officers. Someone come and take this off of him. A police officer immediately stepped forward and unlocked the handcuffs on Tang Hao. I did not expect that you are proficient in martial arts too, Lil Tang. Secretary Lin smiled. Tang Hao smiled humbly. Lil Tang, do you know, my Mingxian has been recovering rapidly over the past few days. Even Senior Dr. Chen said that it is a miracle. I will have to properly thank you one more time. Are you free tonight? Shall we have dinner? All right. Tang Hao agreed to it. It is settled then. Rengui and President Liu, both of you should come too. We will dine at Beyond Heaven Restaurant. Beyond Heaven Restaurant. Then it's on me, Secretary Lin. Lu Dajuan proclaimed gregariously. No need. This is my treat for Lil Tang, how can I ask you to pay? Secretary Lin insisted, let us go out. We have spent enough time here. Secretary Lin then led Tang Hao out of the interrogation room. Tang Hao breathed a sigh of relief when he stepped out of the interrogation room. Fortunately, this was only a false alarm. He felt even more indebted to Secretary Lin after this incident. If not for him, he would be in big trouble. He might even be locked away for a long time. After chatting with Secretary Lin for a while more, Tang Hao retrieved his belongings and his little three-wheeled motorcycle from the police station. At the front entrance of the police headquarters, Lu Dajuan told him, Lil Tang, your mansion is already ready to move in. Let's move today. Moving house is an auspicious event. It can neutralize this bad luck. Good idea. Let's move today. President Li and the others agreed. All right then. Tang Hao agreed after thinking about it. To him, there was no difference to the day he moved. Since the others had suggested it, he had no qualms in agreeing with them. Even so, there were not many things from his old house that were worth bringing over. Yippee! Let's move. Lil Tang, will be your movers. Lu Dajuan was ecstatic, even more so than Tang Hao. Tang Hao then drove on his little three-wheeled motorcycle toward Tang Village. Behind him was a fleet of luxury cars. Tang Hao's return to the village caused another commotion. Lil Hao is back. Look at that spectacle. A whole fleet of luxury cars following him. Oh my. Lil Hao is sure lucky. His fellow villagers rushed out of their houses and pointed and commented at this fleet of vehicles. Their faces displayed total admiration. Tang Hao hopped off his ride at the front gate of his house, then announced to everyone, my fellow villagers, I will be moving away from Tang Village today. Tang Hao's roots remain here, and I will still return here often to visit. Everyone cheered. Lil Hao is moving house. That's good news. Hey Lil Hao, remember to come back often. The villagers chattered. Tang Hao went into his house and went around the place. He picked several things and President Biao and the others moved it to their cars. With his fellow villagers lining both sides of the road, the fleet of vehicles drove out of Tang village. Chapter 48. Living with Sis Xiangyi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. It was already evening when everything was arranged in the new house. Tang Hao paced around his new house a few times. The mansion was spacious and the decorations were extremely luxurious. Outside of the house was a garden and a swimming pool. He had stayed in a small house all his life and was not used to living in so much space. He stood in the middle of the living room and looked all around him. His heart was a mix of emotions. He soon received a phone call from Secretary Lin. There are some complications, Lil Tang. Chen Sandao has escaped. Tang Hao furrowed his brows when he heard this news. Chen Sandao was a gangster and was notorious for his cruelty. If he had escaped, there was a high chance that he would eventually return to take his revenge. He was not afraid of that, but he was worried about Sis Xiangyi's safety. I have already assigned a task force to pursue him in the entire city, and we are hoping to capture him as soon as we can. Before this happens, I hope you can raise your alert, Lil Tang. I will also assign a police officer to guard you. No need for that, Secretary Lin. Chen Sandao won't be strong enough to hurt me. There's someone else that needs protecting though. She's the reason why Chen Sandao has a grudge with me. Oh, Boss Qin, right. I have heard the news. I will arrange for that then. Right, we should invite Boss Qin for tonight's dinner too. Tang Hao agreed to that, then ended the call. He thought for a bit, then dialed Sis Xiangyi's phone number and told her everything that happened today. What? Something this serious happened today, and you're only telling me now? Qin Xiangyi complained. I didn't want you to be worried, Sis Xiangyi. Where are you now? I'll come with President Liu to pick you up and have dinner tonight with Secretary Lin. I'm still at the factory. Just wait there. Tang Hao ended the call and left for Sis Xiangyi with Lu Dajuan. They went to Beyond Heaven restaurant after that. They met up with Secretary Lin and his wife at Beyond Heaven restaurant. You're here, Lil Tang. Secretary Lin stepped forward and shook hands eagerly with Tang Hao. I've heard about what happened today. You've been through a lot. Su Yun looked at him dearly. It's nothing. It's all thanks to Secretary Lin that I'm safe. Tang Hao smiled. Why are we still standing here? Let us go upstairs. After Secretary Lin shook hands with Lu Dajuan and the rest, they all headed upstairs to a private room. Everyone ate and drank to their fill at the banquet. The atmosphere was cheerful and festive. Meanwhile, Qin Xiangyi was introducing the beauty enhancement cream to Su Yun. Sis Qin. Are you saying that this beauty cream is that miraculous? Su Yun beheld the small box of beauty enhancement cream in her hand. Exactly. It's handmade by Lil Tang, Qin Xiangyi explained. It can whiten and moisturize the skin. The effects are amazing. All suspicion was erased from Su Yun's mind when she knew that this was handmade by Tang Hao. If Lil Tang made this himself, then there are no problems. She fondly held the box of beauty enhancement cream in her palm, then, as though she had just remembered something, she told Tang Hao, Hey, Lil Tang. This beauty enhancement cream of yours is a big business opportunity. Have you ever thought of setting up a factory? Everyone became silent after she raised the question. President Huang smiled. Sis Yun, that's not all that Lil Tang has. He also concocts his own weight-loss potions, aphrodisiac potions, hair-growth potions, and all sorts of other stuff. They're amazing too. Oh. They're really that amazing. Secretary Lin was piqued. Isn't that so? Let's just talk about the weight-loss potions. You can see the effects in a day just by drinking one bottle. You can lose more than 10 pounds. Look at our bodies, Secretary Lin. How slim they are now. You remember that we used to be fat with beer bellies, right? Lu Dajuan said. Right. And also the aphrodisiac potion, it's super effective. President Biao shouted. Secretary Lin was thrilled. That's wonderful. These are all business opportunities. If we can produce these on a large scale, they can be the main exports of Westridge District. Secretary Lin's face was glowing as if he could see the bright future that will be brought to the district. Have you thought of that, Lil Tang? I will give you all my support if you decide to do it. The paperwork will not be a problem. Everyone around the banquet table looked expectantly at Tang Hao. Tang Hao looked contemplative. He had thought of expanding the business before. However, to produce the potions on a large scale, there were problems in both the supply of medicinal herbs and the production of the potions. The biggest problem was that the supply of raw ingredients could not meet the demands of large-scale production. Secondly, he needed to instill qi into every single herb before it was processed so that its potency can be fully unleashed. There was only one of him, and therefore he could not duplicate this method in a production plant. If this step was skipped, the potions produced would not have such amazing effects. With his foray into the art of talisman making recently, he might have a solution to the problem of production. The remaining problem was the supply. The most direct way to solve this problem was to acquire a piece of land and plant his own medicinal herbs. Tang Hao thought through the issue and replied, Secretary Lin, there are still some difficulties with producing the potions at a large scale. The biggest one is the supply of medicinal herbs, but I was thinking of solving that by planting the herbs myself. Perhaps we can acquire a plot of land as a plantation for medicinal herbs. A plantation. All right. Let me know when you have found a suitable piece of land and I will take care of the rest, Secretary Lin said. Lu Dajuan and the others were piqued by this. Back then when they brought up the idea, Tang Hao had immediately declined it. This time, he said that he could prepare a plantation first. This also meant an opportunity for them. Do you have any idea where to set up your plantation already, Lil Tang? Lu Dajuan asked. I haven't. It's crucial to find the perfect plot of land for a plantation. I'll let you all know when I've found the ideal place. No problem. You can look for us if you need any help. Lu Dajuan slapped his chest and proclaimed gregariously. The banquet lasted for a few hours. After saying goodbye to Secretary Lin and the others, Tang Hao walked with Qin Xiangyi to the parking lot. Can I stay at your house tonight, Lil Tang? Qin Xiangyi suddenly asked. Tang Hao was surprised. He remembered that Chen Sandao was still on the run, and it was not safe for Sis Xiangyi to be home alone. All right. Qin Xiangyi covered her mouth and smiled. That means I get to see your new house too. Oh, I've got to pack a few things from my house first. Tang Hao sat into her car, and both of them arrived at Azure Sky Gardens. Soon, Tang Hao realized what she meant by a few things. He watched slack-jawed as Sis Xiangyi carried bags upon bags of clothes and other accessories from her house. To Tang Hao, this was almost like moving house. Sis Xiangyi, you. What about it? I need all this. I'm not only going to stay for one day. As long as Chen Sandao isn't caught yet, it's not safe staying here. I feel a lot safer staying with you. Qin Xiangyi smiled blithely. Amid that blithe smile was a hint of cheekiness. Tang Hao was stunned. He blushed. Does this mean that I'll be living with Sis Xiangyi for the next few days? His eyes swept over her voluptuous body and slender legs. He could feel something heat up within him. Chapter 49. Dragon Rock Village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Celestial Foothill Gardens. Tang Hao was sitting cross-legged on the floor in one of the rooms in the mansion. Heaps of medicinal herbs were placed around him. He picked up a stalk of herbs and held it in his palm. His palm was soon enveloped in a warm, pale glow like moonlight. After holding the herb in his palm for 1 or 2 minutes, he placed the herb into a mortar with a few other herbs and smashed them with a pestle. Soon, a small bowl of medicinal liquid was produced. He poured the liquid into a bottle and diluted it with tea. The result was an aphrodisiac potion. He placed the bottle into its packaging and set it aside. After a short rest, he started production on the next bottle. Crack. Boom. He heard a thunderclap from outside the window. Lightning flashed across the night sky, briefly illuminating the surroundings. Tang Hao lifted his head to see that there was a thunderstorm outside. He turned back and returned to potion production. He heard quiet footsteps coming from outside the room. Then, the room door creaked open. Sis Xiangyi stepped in. She was dressed in lacy lingerie that exposed most of her curves. Her black hair was scattered over her shoulders. Tang Hao went cross-eyed when he saw her. Sis Xiangyi, you. Tang Hao was a little flustered. Lil Tang, I'm scared. Can I sleep in your room tonight? Her tone of voice sounded a little strange. Tang Hao noticed that her face was paler than usual and she seemed unusually delicate. Oh. He replied. In his heart, he was not expecting the usually strong, decisive Sis Xiangyi to have such a vulnerable side. He blushed even harder when he swept his eyes over her body. Qin Xiangyi closed the door and walked beside Tang Hao. She sat on the bed and looked at the heaps of medicinal herbs all over the floor. Aren't you sleeping yet, Lil Tang? Soon. I'll go to bed after concocting a few more bottles. Tang Hao's head was lowered. Qin Xiangyi chuckled when she saw that Tang Hao was behaving weirdly. Don't tell me you're afraid too, Lil Tang. Afraid? What should I be afraid about? Tang Hao asked hesitantly. He turned to his side and saw her charming face. Tang Hao's heart started thumping wildly and he quickly averted his eyes. You said you weren't afraid. Qin Xiangyi burst out laughing. She thought he looked cute when he was flustered. Go to bed, Lil Tang. You can continue tomorrow. She whispered next to Tang Hao's ear. Tang Hao was thoroughly distracted. He did not have the heart to continue with the potions. He tidied up the place a little, then said, You can sleep on the bed, Sis Xiangyi. I'll sleep on the floor. How can that be? I'll sleep here and you sleep there. Qin Xiangyi drew an imaginary line down the middle of the bed with her finger. The bed was spacious. Half of it was already enough for each of them. Tang Hao hesitated for a while then agreed. Qin Xiangyi lifted the blanket and snuggled inside. Tang Hao hemmed and hawed for a while, then went under the blanket and switched off the light. Crack. Boom. The thunderclaps from outside grew in intensity. Tang Hao turned his head and looked at her. Her face was still pale. She was curled up and shivering. Don't be afraid, Sis Xiangyi, I'm here. Tang Hao whispered. She replied. Suddenly, she shifted her body toward Tang Hao. Under the blanket, Tang Hao could feel the coolness of Sis Xiangyi's skin as her hand reached for his and grabbed it tightly. In the darkness, their eyes met while their hands were grasped together. Something was brewing in their gazes. Suddenly, she shifted her body again and leaned over. Her delicate arms reached around Tang Hao and hugged him tightly. Tang Hao's body went stiff. His eyes were opened round and wide and he did not know what to do. Don't move. Just sleep like this. She whispered as she closed her eyes. He could see that her petite face was also blushing madly and her entire body was taut. Tang Hao looked at the charming face that was only inches away from his. His heart was thumping madly. He was almost 18 years old. The age of overactive hormones. He was not able to take it any longer. A war of morality raged in his brains. After struggling for a long time, he finally managed to put out that wild thought. He thought that this was not the time yet, and there will be more opportunities in the future. He gradually calmed down and soon fell asleep in her arms. There was a small commotion when both of them woke up the next morning. Sis Xiany's body was almost on top of him. Her pose was extremely misleading. Her face was red and hot. Her red phoenix eyes displayed a hint of charm as she glanced at Tang Hao. Then, she hastily scooted out of the bed and ran away as if escaping from something. After breakfast, she went to the factory. Meanwhile, Tang Hao drank a bottle of liquid of spiritual condensation. After absorbing it, he changed clothes and rode out on his little three-wheeled motorcycle. His plan today was to survey different areas of the district to find a suitable place to set up a medicinal herb plantation. A place with a strong flow of qi would be the ideal place. Those places could be found deep in the mountains. Tang village was too near to town and thus the qi flow was weak. It was not a good place. He rode on his little three-wheeled motorcycle from Celestial Foothill Gardens and moved forward. On one side of the road was a mountain range. Tang Hao occasionally stopped to survey the mountains in the distance. Sometimes, he turned into a fork in the road and surveyed the interior. It was soon noon. As he drove forward, he saw a fork on the road in front of him. There was a sign on which was written, Dragon Rock Village. Tang Hao was surprised when he saw this sign. He was familiar with Dragon Rock Village. His mother was from there, and he would return to the village a few times every year to visit his maternal grandparents. Since I'm here, I should go and pay a visit to Grandpa and Grandma. I hope they're still healthy. Bearing that thought, Tang Hao rode his motorcycle into the road and toward Dragon Rock Village. Dragon Rock Village was situated in the middle of a big mountain. One needed to traverse a few mountains to get there. The roads were bumpy and twisted. It was a great hassle to get there. Because of that, Dragon Rock Village was a lot more backward and poor compared to Tang Village. After a bumpy ride, Tang Hao finally rode past the mountainous dirt roads and reached a flat road. Soon, a village appeared within sight. That was Dragon Rock Village. Chapter 50. Sure you are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The little three-wheeled motorcycle drove past a stretch of muddy dirt road toward the village. A comforting scenery of green mountains and clear waters greeted him. Small hovels were built along the mountainside in the distance. He could see smoke rising from the chimneys. After crossing a bridge over a stream, he reached the entrance of the village. There were some women doing laundry next to the stream. They carefully examined Tang Hao. Dragon Rock Village was a small settlement and not many people lived there. Everyone knew each other and so they would be curious whenever a stranger turned up. Whose kid is this? The group of women talked among themselves. Suddenly, a woman stood up and exclaimed in surprise, "Oh! Aren't you Lil Hao? Lil Hao? Isn't that Caifeng's son?" The full name of Tang Hao's mother was Shi Kaifeng. Tang Hao stopped and turned to look. "Auntie." He greeted that woman. She was Lu Yan, his maternal uncle's wife. "Oh, you're really Lil Hao. I haven't seen you for only months and I almost didn't recognize you." Lu Yan smiled. "He's really Caifeng's son. He's already so tall. Ah, he must be leading a hard life. I've heard that he's a delivery boy now. That's not too bad." The women discussed him while doing their laundry. Lu Yan placed the clean laundry in a basket, then walked uphill from the streamside. "Lil Hao, you're here just in time. Come, let's have lunch at my house," she said hospitably. Tang Hao felt welcome. His aunt had a friendly personality and had always treated him well. She always invited him for a meal every time he visited. "It's all right, Auntie. I want to visit Grandpa and Grandma first. Are they still healthy? Not bad, but as you know, they're already old. It's unavoidable that they have small problems. Lu Yen said. BDNVL.M, hop on, Auntie, let me give you a ride, Tang Hao beckoned. Lu Yen was happy. You're such a courteous kid. Right, how's work? Not bad. Tang Hao nodded. Good to know. After he sent Lu Yen back and exchanged greetings with his uncle, Tang Hao rode toward Grandma's house. From a distance, he saw Grandpa sitting outside the house basking in the sun. His body was covered in mud, evidently having just returned from toiling in the fields. Grandpa had been a laborer all his life and could not sit still at home, even at this age. Grandpa. Tang Hao hopped off the motorcycle and greeted his maternal grandfather. Lil Hao. Grandpa stood up. An expression of joy came to his face. Why are you here all of a sudden? You didn't inform me before this. I could have asked your grandma to prepare some good food for you. After that, he turned around to enter the house. It's fine, Grandpa. Anything will do. Tang Hao said urgently. They entered the house and Tang Hao helped his maternal grandmother to prepare the meal. They sat happily around the table and enjoyed a simple lunch. How are you lately, Lil Hao? Everything fine at work? Grandpa asked. I've recently quit my job, Grandpa. I was introduced to a few rich bosses and we're now preparing to go into the Chinese medicine business. Actually, I'm here to survey a location. Grandpa looked surprised, then he said happily, that's great news. These rich bosses are important people, you'll have to treasure these connections, Lil Hao. Right, what kind of location are you looking for? I'm looking for a plot of land for a medicinal herb plantation. Plantation. Grandpa had an idea. What do you think of our Dragon Rock village, Lil Hao? Well. I haven't surveyed the place yet. I should go take a better look later. Alright. After lunch, Tang Hao gave Grandpa and Grandma several bottles of health.care potions from his backpack. The potions were exceptional nutritional supplements for elderly folk. This must be very expensive, right, Lil Hao? You don't have to buy these for us the next time, Grandma said endearingly. It's not expensive at all, Grandma. I made these myself. I've picked up some herbalist skills recently and learned how to concoct potions. I sell these to the big bosses. They're really effective. Really? Grandpa was doubtful. You can give it a try if you don't believe me. Grandpa doubtfully twisted open the bottle cap and gulped one mouthful. Then, his entire body trembled and his eyes opened round and wide. His face displayed an expression of incredulity. The potion was cool in his mouth but became boiling hot when it reached his stomach. It turned into warm currents of energy that spread throughout his body. His whole body felt like melting and it was incredibly comfortable. He closed his eyes and exhaled a contented sigh. He was enjoying the moment. When he opened his eyes, his emotions were spirited. That's incredible, Lil Hao, your potion is amazing. I haven't felt so energetic for years, and my body is filled with strength. After that, he stood up and stretched his limbs. Haha. I feel like I'm a few years younger already. This is really good stuff, Lil Hao. You'll never worry about money anymore with this talent. Grandma smiled warmly. Lil Hao, I'm so happy for your talents. After chatting with Grandpa and Grandma for a while more, Tang Hao left the house and surveyed the surroundings of the village. Dragon Rock Village was situated deep in the mountains and on a largely untouched plot of land. The flow of qi in this area was much stronger than Tang Village or in town, and was quite suitable for his purposes of planting medicinal herbs. It's decided then. If I can set up a plantation here, it's also good news for the people of Dragon Rock Village. Tang Hao made up his mind as he stood on top of a hill and looked at the surroundings. After this, I'll have to discuss the issue with the village elder and the council. He turned around and got off the hill, back toward the village. At the crossroads toward the village, he saw a beautiful silhouette coming toward him. She was a girl of 17 or 18. She was dressed very plainly, though that did not conceal her natural beauty. Her body was slim, and her ink-black hair was like a waterfall. It danced gently when the mountain wind blew. Under the sun, her face was beautiful and pure like a lily, or as enchanting as a fairy that had descended from the heavens to the mortal world. Tang Hao was stunned. He stopped in his tracks. Yenner. His mouth opened automatically. The young girl had also noticed Tang Hao by then. She furrowed her brows and looked at him, then displayed a look of surprise. Your brother Hao. She quickly walked toward him. Her innocent face smiled. Her smile was charming and her voice was sweet, like a gust of spring breeze that touched one's heart. You're really brother Hao. I almost couldn't recognize you. You too. You've changed from a small girl to such a beautiful woman. Tang Hao smiled. As he looked at her, he offered silent praises in his heart. This was not the girl who had caught crayfish and dug sweet potatoes with him when they were a lot younger. In the blink of an eye, she had grown to be a magnificent young woman. Her beauty did not belong to this little village in the mountains.